Nancy Pelosi got so mad at the truth, her face almost moved. Middle schoolers who protested a bio-male competitor are banned from future meets. And George Santos revived his drag queen alter ego to grift on Cameo. Pro-terrorists at UCLA are making demands for zip ties and lotion. Oh boy, it's time for my losers of the week. So college campuses taken over by feral pro-terrorist insurrectionists demanding the right to Uber Eats really does set the bar for loserdom, but so do my next selections for the week. First up is Democrat den mother Nancy Pelosi. You know, you want to offend a Republican, tell us a lie. You want to offend a Democrat, well, tell them the truth. Watch.
And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And
I
he
don't
has
think
the
that
worst.
anybody can accuse me of that.
Yeah, Nancy, MSNBS is known for its pro-Trump slant. You nailed it. She was so ticked off, I swear, even for just a split second, her face actually moved. But that MSNBC host, Katie Tur, is proof that even a blind squirrel finds a nut. I give her mad props for dispelling one of the major Democrat talking points that somehow bringing back the jobs forcibly lost due to the COVID scamdemic is proof of Joe Biden's accomplishment as a job creator. Yeah. But speaking of scams, let's now turn to loser 2 this week. Lincoln Middle School in West Virginia. You know, when 5 brave girls from the middle school's track and field team refused to compete against a biological male on puberty blockers and hormone therapy, they were banned from competing in future meets. Even though the state of West Virginia bans bio males from playing on girls' teams, that recent federal appeals court ruling stands in the way. Now, West Virginia AG Patrick Morrissey is fighting back, but the moral of the story is this. Girls are being sacrificed at the altar of woke at the hands of the very liberals who proclaim to be feminists, now proving my long-held point that feminists are not actually pro-women, they're just pro-abortion and anti-straight men who identify as men. And wouldn't you know it, that brings me to another loser of the week, disgraced former New York Congressman George Santos. Now, money must be getting tight for George because he has brought back his drag queen alter ego, Katara Ravish, back for a cameo cash-in. Now listen. This is pretty cringe, but I will give some credit where credit is due because according to Katara's Cameo profile and message to messy bitches, 10% of the money will support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation and another 10% will go to the pro-Israel philanthropic organization, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. So get that bag, Katara. There are worse ways to spend $350, I suppose. Now, folks, normally I do select 3 losers for my list, but this has been such a stupid week, I had to add a 4th, and believe me, it's worth it. According to a Google Doc obtained by Fox News, the pro-terror protesters at UCLA have drafted a wish list of demands. Included on that list, vegan and gluten-free food, super bright flashlights with strobe, rope and zip ties, helmets, shields, and wood, lotion, no sunscreen, knee and elbow pads. If this weren't so pathetic, it would be utterly hilarious. But isn't it interesting that all of these pro-terrorist freaks on college campuses are making demands for resources and amenities? You know, if these losers actually cared about the people in Gaza, they would be setting up drives to gather resources to send to the Palestinians. But we all know this has nothing to do with any of that. This is self-indulgent, narcissistic behavior by leftist loony bins who are the misfits of society and are so happy to finally get attention from somebody. So God help them and God help us all. Those are my losers of the week. Shifting gears now to a topic that is near and dear to my heart and much better to talk about. American craftsmen making American products right here in America. All things I love. My next guest fits that bill, but he says the American dream has never been harder thanks to Chinese ripoffs and non-compete clauses making it harder to retain employees. Josh Smith, founder of Montana Knife Company, joins me now. Josh, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, you know, we got a lot of a lot of crazy things happening in this country right now, but I think we have to make sure we don't get off track and sidetrack to the real problems facing real Americans out there, because despite the squeaky wheels getting the grease on all these college campuses and all this chaos that's going on, there are real Americans who own real American companies who, despite their great work and their great product, are suffering right now. And I know that although your company is very successful, I was happy to see that you are speaking out as somebody who is a small business owner, talking about some of the issues that are actually happening to real Americans. So I want to jump into that. As a business owner, as somebody who's trying to do the right thing, create jobs here in America, what would you say is the primary reason the American dream is harder to reach than ever?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of our policies, taxes. It's incredible the negative effect that high taxes have on a small growing company. We've only been in business for about 3.5 years. And the amount of taxes that we're paying as we're trying to grow and scale just absolutely are devastating to our growth. And then not to mention the policies that allow Chinese products to come in, and make it really difficult to scale and grow. We've hired now, we're up to 56 employees in just 3 years. And we're growing, but man, the government being in the way is definitely makes it a challenge.
So what would happen if your company was based somewhere like California, for example? Because, there's a lot of regulations and red tape that businesses there are facing, a lot of them having to close up due to, the increase in minimum wage for fast food workers. I mean, you name it. Some of these states, it's even harder than others. Would you be able to maintain a business in California?
I'm not even so sure how much we would be allowed to operate in California, being the fact that we make hunting knives. It's amazing. We can't even run ads on Instagram, Meta, Facebook. We always are getting flagged for posts, and all we make are hunting knives, simple hunting knives, and they're deemed weapons. So between the taxes, the regulations in California, I thank God we're a Montana knife company. I do want to say we're proving that the American dream is real and it is alive, but it's very, very difficult. It's very hard, but we're proof that it's still possible. And I encourage, we started this company, I did, in my garage, and we're still on my home piece of property right now. Between the cost of real estate and taxes and everything, it's very hard to scale and push to that next level.
A lot of things I want to talk to you about business-wise, but being that you are in Montana, I myself am from South Dakota, and I know that Montana, as of recently, I mean, this has always kind of been a thing, but especially as of the last maybe 5 years, a lot of Californians moving to Montana, a lot of big city liberals moving to Montana. And I think that the show Yellowstone kind of highlighted it for those that were, unfamiliar with that process. But I think there's a lot of locals like yourself who, have land, who have companies. Then you've got these Californians coming in with all this money because they sold their home for, $2 million or more in California. They come to Montana, they drive up real estate prices, they drive up really prices of everything. Is that something that you've had to deal with not only as a business owner, but as a resident in Montana, and maybe your friends and neighbors as well?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the price of real estate here has probably gone up by close to 200% in just the last 5 to 7 years. And really after COVID, when people started realizing they needed to escape the policies of places like Portland and California, these people came in and it really did drive the prices up. I have a young kids that are, one just graduated high school. I don't know how they're ever going to afford to buy homes. And then you look at what it costs to buy commercial property for us to grow and expand. It does make it incredibly, incredibly difficult to do that. And I hope that these people, when they come to our state, will maybe not drag their policies along with them. I hope we're getting the good ones out of that state.
We have here in Tennessee, for the most part, I would say that a lot of the people that move here come here for the right reasons and they understand, but there's always going to be those that don't, always going to be those that want to bring their policies with them. So that's unfortunate. Another thing I want to talk to you about, though, is something that might not get like all the glitz and the glamour and the coverage when we talk about the struggles of business owners, and that's non-compete clauses. For those that are unfamiliar of what that can actually do, a lot of people think that that's kind of more in the corporate world, or the headhunter is trying to get good employees for corporate America, but that's something that's also touching small businesses. Can you tell me how it's affected you and why you've been outspoken about it?
Yeah, recently we were actually just sued by Benchmade Knife Company. And it's really sad because, we're an American-made knife company, a small company, operating on my personal piece of property. And we offered a job to one of their employees and we were sued over a non-compete. issue, and they even threatened to sue him as well to try to badger him into as a non-compete. And I'm a free market guy. And the government came out and just banned non-competes, and I'm not sure if it'll stick or not, but I believe if you're running your business in the right way, if you have the correct culture in your business, you shouldn't be worried about losing companies. And really, this guy is a guy that wants to move out of Portland. He has young kids. He wants to raise his kids in Montana. The politics and the schools and stuff have been destroyed out there. And he can't move his family 500 miles away and work for another company in his industry for the next 2 years. I'm a free market guy. I think if you're running your business the right way, you're going to retain your employees. And if you're not, they're going to want to leave. And so that's really proving to be a challenge for us to hire and get good talent. And frankly, as the American worker, people need to be advocating for themselves and their freedom of movement to go and take jobs, that better their own situations, their own families.
What's crazy to me is it is so hard to find good workers. I'm sure not every Joe Schmo off the street can do what you guys do. It's a skill set. It's a craftsmanship that not a lot of people have, and probably dwindling workforce, even so, because a lot of young people are not learning how to work with their hands. They're learning to work with their fingers on a keyboard, which is not all bad. But I can only imagine how difficult it is to find people that can do what you do. I know that you guys obviously work with a lot of veterans, which is fantastic, but I want to shift even to just the overall workforce. Something I've been talking about kind of all week. I had on yesterday somebody who is a New York City labor union leader, and he's saying, listen, there's not a lot of young people that are growing up wanting to do, manual labor. Is that something that you found as well? I know Montana might be an outlier to that, but it's got to be difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is really difficult. I mean, we only have 1 million people in our entire state, and it's the fourth largest state in the union. So, attracting talent, bringing in talent between the cost of high land values. Young people, I'll be honest, a lot of our young people are Montanans, and we have a really young workforce, and they've done really well for us. But I see Biden paying off people with art degrees, paying off their student loans. We need to be encouraging people to take, go into the trades, learn machining. We're a company that hires machinists and people who can actually work with their hands. I was a journeyman lineman for the power company at one point. We need people who can build and create and work with their hands. And I find it interesting that Biden's not paying off engineers student loans, just art students. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Well, and also just people that are going into trades and going into education systems that are actually affordable, graduating with degrees or specialties that are actually useful. What happens to them? I mean, they get no assistance. And then meanwhile, you've got these kids who are going, to get their degrees in pro-terrorism that are coming out with nothing, and they want their student loans paid off. So it's really incredible to me how that's going down. I want to ask you too, last thing about just Montana and the Midwest. I stay very in touch with what's going on in the Midwest. My family is all still in South Dakota, so I know that the heartland is still vibrant. It's growing. A lot of people coming. A lot of growth happening. Sometimes for better or for worse. But as far as the mindset in places like Montana, is it still pretty solidly red conservative, or are you seeing a shift there? Because Montana's been getting a little funky, maybe in the last few years.
Yeah, I think actually it was a little funkier a while back. We have a Republican governor now, Republican House, and Senate here. And it's, Montana. And I think really, honestly, a lot of these new people moving in are more voting red because they've seen what those policies have done to their states and where they've come from. I was actually just at a campaign event with Donald Trump Jr. He came and stayed at my house for a couple nights, and it was for Tim Sheehy, who's running against John Tester, who definitely needs to go. He's been in Congress way too long and has been chewed up by the swamp. But Montana's definitely red. COVID, I think, was really something that people got their eyes opened up to. You live in the middle of nowhere in Montana, you're not allowed to go outside or go to a grocery store in a small town. And what they did with COVID, that overreach. I really do think we're seeing the pendulum swing back in the direction it should be.
So I want to talk about that because you brought up something interesting. During COVID in Montana, what were the restrictions like where you were?
Yeah, really, in the bigger cities, in Missoula and, Bozeman, places like that, they tried to have some restrictions. But honestly, my kids went to school. They played all their sports. The teachers really didn't enforce the mask thing too much, in some of the more liberal areas down. And again, it always seems to be in the cities. more in town. My wife was a school teacher and she quit going into the 2021 school year because they told her she was going to have to wear a mask again. And she works for us now and runs our fulfillment and in our customer service. So, really Montana pushed back hard against that. It really wasn't as bad as what we were seeing in other states. And again, that's why people flooded to this state,
Yeah. I believe California Governor Gavin Newsom also came to Montana with his family, which was interesting because he had a lot to say about Montana previously due to different things in regards to abortion and whatnot. So interesting that all the liberals flocked to Montana, they flocked to Tennessee, they flocked to Florida. That was a hot spot. A lot of liberals wanted to go vacation in Florida. I think even AOC brought her dorky fiance to Florida. So really interesting. They love to party in the red states. We'd prefer they didn't, but.
Yeah, Pelosi and Newsom were both spotted in restaurants here during COVID without masks on, doing what they do. Escaping from the rules that they made in their own states. So it's kind of mind-boggling.
Oh, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi is really popular in Montana.
Yeah.
Interesting place for her to be. Gavin Newsom, same story with him. Well, I appreciate everything that you're doing. Where can my viewers go to get their hands on one of your hunting knives and get some American craftsmanship and support, a business that's made in America?
Yeah, our MontanaKnifeCompany.com website and our Montana Knife Company Instagram. We also have chef's knives, amazing chef's knives, culinary sets, and we're launching into tactical knives this year. I want to see our soldiers, carrying quality, tools, on their kits and when they're overseas and whatnot. So we're really growing and expanding. We're going to be we're working on buying some land and building a new manufacturing facility. I encourage people to check us out because it really is the American dream. Kind of against all odds with this administration. I told Trump Jr. when he was here this last weekend, man, we got to get his dad back in there, and we got to change this the direction of this company or this country, frankly, or we're going to be in trouble, bigger trouble.
Yeah, even bigger trouble. I can't imagine what another 4 years of Kamala Harris would be, because let's be honest, that's who it would be. Or maybe Gavin Newsom. That's also worse. So things can get better or they can get worse. I guess it's a choice for the American people in less than 200 days. So good luck to you and your company. Thanks for being American made, standing up for American values. We certainly need more of it, and God bless you.
It really does mean a lot that you had me on. We're a small company. You have a big platform. You have no idea how much it helps. So thank you, Tomi.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for being here. God bless you and your family.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. All right, folks, that does it for this week of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Please catch me tonight on Hannity, 9 p.m. Eastern, of course, on Fox News. Plus, OutKick's very own Tyrus sat down with former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland in a wide-ranging interview that drops this Sunday across the OutKick network. So I'll leave you with a sneak peek.
You grew up in an era where women were basically second-class citizens.
Yeah, totally.
Like a secretary or a wife.
You could be a secretary
or a nurse
an administrator.
in some cases.
So I would go to college, right? I got a degree in Chinese studies. I could get a job working as an assistant or a secretary to the guy who had the same degree. It probably didn't do as well as I did, but that was my job opportunity. And it wasn't the same. I mean, you had to really be smarter, better, work harder, and then have a lot of good grades.
Was there a lot of protests from women in your college and stuff like it is today?
No, not then. You didn't think you had any rights. I mean, you were just happy to be in a room where you weren't getting coffee for everybody.
Wow. And when you see people complain today about opportunity, do you just have to laugh and shake your head because it's nothing like that anymore?
No, but I've got two daughters who are in their 30s, and they're both very successful. One went to the Naval Academy, and she's a lieutenant commander in the reserves, and she's a state representative from Sarasota to Tallahassee. 3 little boys, 3, 2, and 1. And then my other daughter, who's a Bitcoin, blockchain, I don't know what she does, but it seems to be quite lucrative and successful. So I look at them, and I think, wow, they have so many great opportunities. Their problem is they feel they have to do it all. They have to be married. They have to have kids. They have to have a career.
Well, someone kind of set the bar kind of high.
Well, but for me, it was easy. I just had the career, I had the family, and then I had the career again.
On top of you're breaking glass barriers all the time.
Yeah, it was always a glass barrier. There was always a glass ceiling. Yeah, always.
Because, was there ever a time where your frustrations would show? Because a lot of times, like, I would always, when I was younger, equate to something not going my way based off the color of my skin. Or, you get those voices around you all the time that will, because misery loves company, and failure is a huge part of success because I've failed a lot. I'm sure
It
you got
drives you.
failures, and even sometimes you were
Yeah.
given failures you didn't earn.
Sure.
What was the toughest one that you can
it
like,
was
think
all
of?
this, all of the sexual harassment stuff was kind of a problem.
So back then it was just
You had no rights. You had no rights.
she had absolutely no.
If you
in the work-
complained, you would be fired, and then you would have like a big X on your name. No. You
So it's like a scarlet letter. Like if you spoke
She's
up and was like,
trouble.
"Hey
Yeah, she's
Johnson, keep your
trouble.
hands to yourself and just take the notes," then it would be you're
she's
fired
trouble.
and she's trouble.
she's trouble. We don't want to have. So I never wanted to. So I always was able to kind of dodge and weave my way around it, and I always had really good mentors who helped. I mean, Henry Kissinger being one, Secretary of Defense Cap Weinberger was another one, and then I got some pretty serious academic credentials. So when I worked at the Pentagon, where there were no women in any senior positions, and I was a Pentagon spokesman, and I was a senior speechwriter, a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. And the fact that I could be pretty tough, and I had a pretty solid academic background, and I could kind of outsmart these guys, a lot of them. It was, I still had to work for it every single day, but I was very lucky to have opportunities like that.
From Nashville, God bless and take care.